That price right now is insane. Like, you can see right here is $5 and sign. You can't even fell on me.
I mean, this is downtown, but $5 is still a little bit, outrageous.
I remember hearing somebody said $14 gallons, and I'm like, holy crap, like that's gonna be crazy.
Trump's fear of skyrocketing oil prices in the US may be one reason behind the longer truce. Growing anger is building in the US as Iran continues to beat the US military, while the pain from higher oil prices only gets worse. Trump is reportedly considering a desperate move as the threat of a Hormuz closure starts to backfire on the US. Out of frustration, the US military has allegedly hijacked another Iran-linked ship, further inflaming the crisis. Iran has threatened to bomb 3 key oil hotspots, a move that could choke global trade and send shockwaves through energy markets. Fuel prices in the US continue to rise amid the Iran war, increasing pressure on Trump and his administration. Amid rising oil prices, the US president is now mulling an extension of the Jones Act waiver. The waiver lets foreign-flagged ships move goods domestically between US ports, easing shipping constraints. Trump's plan was reported by Axios and cited in a Times of Israel report on April 21st. The report came on the same day that Trump indefinitely extended the Iran truce, adding to the timing debate. However, Trump said the US blockade on Iranian ports, meant to pressure Tehran, will continue. Trump waived Jones Act curbs for 60 days starting March 17th, just weeks after the war began. This increased shipments from the US Gulf Coast to other coastal markets across the country. However, rising oil prices are continuing to pinch American consumers, especially at the fuel pump.
That price right now is insane. Like, you can see right here is $5 and sign. You can't even fell on me. Just what? With $50 is gonna be only 2 gallons? That's very insane, man.
I mean, this is downtown, but $5 is still a little bit, outrageous. But even I live in the Bronx, and I have a premium car, so I always have the short end of the stick. So I'm paying $70, almost $80 a tank for my vehicle, and thankfully I don't got to pay for this vehicle, but still, like, even as a company, that still hurts. Even though I don't see it, but $80 for regular is crazy.
I will say that every time I'm pulling up to a gas station now, it's a little bit of a hesitation to know that it's going to cost a bit more than it did before.
Really lucky to pay for this war in gas prices and not with lives in America, right? And I think that's very important to have that perspective while we're dealing with this every day and not forget about the reality of what is beyond gas prices. Even though it is very transformative for most people to have to be taking on this financial burden.
I mean, hopefully it does not keep going up, I mean, I remember hearing somebody said $14 gallons, and I'm like, holy crap, that's going to be crazy, So hopefully it does get resolved very soon, and that, peace.
They invested billions of dollars on missiles or whatever they did. I don't know, but basically what I heard, so I guess all our money they put it on that instead of,
Everybody says the same thing. You saw the change after the war, and unfortunately, we don't have nothing to do with that, so we're facing the repercussions of that, even though we didn't make any decisions in that.
California stands among the very first states in the United States to feel the devastating effects of the oil shock stemming directly from the ongoing conflict with Iran, hitting residents with immediate shortages and soaring costs. California's gasoline inventories have sharply declined to unprecedented record lows amid this turmoil, even as fuel prices continue to surge upward at gas stations across the state, squeezing consumers harder every day. A deeply worrying situation unfolding in California was exclusively revealed by the Reuters news agency in their detailed report published just yesterday on April 16th, shining a spotlight on the brewing crisis. Californians are now shelling out an average of $5.86 per gallon for fuel at the pump, marking the highest price anywhere in the entire US and turning routine drives into a major financial burden for millions. The California rate towers far above the national average of just $4.09 per gallon seen in the rest of the US, according to the latest data from Reuters, highlighting the state's unique vulnerability in this energy crunch. Since California heavily relies on imported refined products shipped in from Asia to meet its massive demand, this escalating crisis is likely to worsen significantly in the coming days and weeks ahead. Back in March 2026, right after launching the war against Iran, President Trump publicly stated that higher global oil prices are actually a good thing for America, dismissing public concerns over the economic fallout. Trump declared, "The US is now the largest oil producer in the world. when oil prices go up like this, we make a lot of money as a nation, framing the surge as a financial win amid the conflict. US President Donald Trump announced on April 21st that the current ceasefire with Iran would be extended, altering the timeline for the temporary pause in hostilities. In a post on his Truth social platform, Trump said that attacks will be held off until Iran puts forward a formal proposal, tying the extension to the prospect of a new diplomatic offer. The truce, which had been set to expire on April 22nd, was extended at the request of Pakistani mediators, as Trump stated, reflecting their continued role as a back-channel broker. Hours earlier, Trump had publicly expressed that he was not in favor of prolonging the ceasefire, according to Al Jazeera coverage of his on-the-record remarks, underscoring the last-minute nature of the reversal. On X, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also expressed gratitude to Trump for extending the ceasefire, welcoming the decision as a chance to preserve the diplomatic window. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "I have therefore directed our military to continue the blockade and, in all other respects, remain ready and able. And will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted, and discussions are concluded, one way or the other." Iranian leadership did not immediately respond to Trump's announcement of the ceasefire extension, leaving the level of Tehran's engagement unclear in the first hours after the move. However, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a warning that it would respond immediately with force if the United States launches any new attacks, maintaining a posture of high alert. Ibrahim Zolfagari said, and I quote, "Our capable and powerful forces have been in a state of 100% readiness and with their fingers on the trigger for a long time. So that in the event of any aggression or action against Islamic Iran, they will immediately launch a powerful attack on predetermined targets. And teach the aggressive America and the child-killing Israeli regime another lesson, more severe than before." Iran has reportedly listed the targets it would hit if US and Israeli strikes on its territory restart, signaling that Tehran is again pointing to the region's critical energy arteries as potential pressure points. Iran's Tasnim News released what it described as an IRGC-linked target list on April 21st, as fresh warnings surfaced over how Tehran could respond if the war restarts. The IRGC would reportedly target the Yanbu pipeline system in Saudi Arabia, which is widely seen as a major alternative route for oil exports that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's military would also reportedly target the UAE's Fujairah oil facilities and the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, both of which are central to efforts to reroute energy flows away from Hormuz. If Iran were to hit those three pressure points, the impact on global crude oil supply could be severe because Yanbu, Fujairah, and Bab al-Mandeb all serve as key alternatives or choke points for international energy shipments. Iran also said it is preparing a decisive and immediate response to any renewed enemy threat, underscoring that its military posture remains on high alert despite the diplomatic track. Major General Abdullahi issued that warning as suspense continued to build over the next round of talks in Pakistan, and over whether Tehran would fully commit to attending. Major General Ali Abdullahi said, and I quote, "Today, the heroic nation of Iran is proud of the authority, preparedness, and all-round strategic capabilities of the IRGC and other forces of the defenders of the homeland, which have driven the Zionist enemy and terrorist America to desperation and exhaustion with deadly and destructive missile and drone strikes and forced them to call for a desperate ceasefire. The people of Iran have not abandoned their support for the armed forces with their enthusiastic and widespread presence in the squares and streets. The brave armed forces of Iran, together with the noble and surprising government and nation of Iran, are united in full compliance with the measures of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, preparing decisive and immediate responses to the threats and actions of the enemy. The armed forces, with a superior hand, did not allow the false and delusional President of America to abuse and make false narratives about the situation in the field and the conditions of silence in the military battle, especially in the management and control of the Strait of Hormuz, and they will respond appropriately to any violation of the covenant. The United States is headed for midterm elections on November 3rd this year, with voters preparing for a closely watched political showdown. Rising prices threaten Trump's Republican Party in the midterm elections, adding pressure on the party's electoral prospects. The midterms will decide control of both chambers of Congress, including the House and Senate, and could reshape the balance of power. Republicans currently hold narrow majorities in both chambers of Congress, leaving little room for political error.